Tim, Paula Bennett isn't even in the country to announce this, as she is on a free-funded re-education trip to America to boost her CV.
Wow,
Sadly, beneficiaries don't have that option available to them. Where do they get the jobs in a 6.4% unemployment environment? Where are they?
Well, that's the thing, because at the moment they are cracking down hard. Next year is going to see a lot of the courses that have been offered, the NZQA courses, cut back to something that's very much shorter, very much less, and the emphasis is going to be on getting a job. But as we all know, there aren't the growth in jobs. There is no jobs to be got.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? It's going to be incredibly frustrating. And I'm seeing we're probably looking at rooms of people on the internet, and they're all in these NGOs and so forth that will be contracted by WINS, and they're all going to be on there, and they're all going to be applying for the same very limited number of jobs.
Yeah.
And it's going to be absolutely crazy because there aren't any. And then they'll get punished for not having a job eventually, and be chucked off the benefit, question mark, onto what?
Yes.
And that's the thing, because there will be tiers of, I don't know if they're using the word punishment exactly, but
It does come across
repercussions.
like that.
Repercussions, yeah.
Penny, bashing beneficiaries is a cultural hobby in New Zealand, alongside alcoholism, domestic violence and rugby. We love to bash the dirty, filthy Benny, and there is a slathering redneck voting base out there who want public floggings of solo mothers in town squares. Isn't John Key just giving his raw meat-eating, ignorant voters what they want? It's democracy in action.
I'm always interested, and I'll get myself into terrible trouble saying this, solo mothers are beneficiaries, superannuants aren't, and I'm really interested in that differentiation. I've just come from a men's breakfast for White Ribbon Day, and the overwhelming message from this wonderful gathering of men was good parenting actually cuts right through that long-term damage and cause of family violence. And I just wonder, really simply, when will parenting go back to being a job? I'm not advocating for women to stay at home and be barefoot and pregnant, and I don't want to Paula bash, but I'm absolutely cut to the quick that we're pushing, parents back out to work before their children are adequately looked after.
Well, but the new suggestion is one. The new suggestion is one.
It's one.
It's 1 year of age.
Absolutely.
How would a mother
to do a job
work
for $10 an hour that takes parents out of the home, causes stress, and then we wonder why our prison stats, our family violence stats, and our education stats are appalling? That's why.
Isn't this pretty just very counterproductive?
Absolutely.
But it works for that voting bloc who love to see solo mothers have a go.
We need to engage in a much more mature discussion. It's just, it's talk-back rhetoric, and people need to get over it.
Isn't it just? Tim, how does the 90-day right to sack law pushed through this week help the unemployment rate, when the Department of Labour told the government there was no evidence that the 90-day right to sack helped increase jobs?
Well, yeah, it's also reneging on what the Nats said, that they would, their little deal with the unions, not to increase it to workplaces of more than 20 employees.
That's right.
So, this is something the National Party have been working on. It's something they wanted to do, and the only way they can do it is to do it by incrementally. And they go in a little bit and they try to work out a deal, and then, of course, they'll turn the knife on them and then increase it again, and maybe next year they'll try and ratchet it up again. But these things are negative. I disagree with studies that have found that it's positive in some way. I mean, in any way, really, because it's a blank check to give bad employers the right to be bad. Really.
Penny, our last great recession in New Zealand saw suicide rates triple to the world's high that they are now. How does cutting people's benefits off help their situation if they're on a benefit because they're depressed already? How is that going to have social impacts?
I think it's convenient for a lot of the people who do the background research and advise ministers, like Minister Bennett, to actually give her bad advice by neglecting those statistics. I would still have hope that someone like Paula would be convinced if she was, was given a slightly broader discussion paper, but I think they're carefully crafted to come up with the 1 + 1 - 2 = 27, let's cut the benefits across the board. I think the suicide rates in New Zealand are concerning, and I certainly think the way we're going isn't going to help.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you probe the welfare raiser gang about how they come to their $50 billion, it's going to cost $50 billion. And you said, well, how did you come to that figure? And the way they did it was they said, well, if every single person who's on a benefit right now stayed on a benefit for the rest of their lives, i.e. that none of them got jobs for the entirety of their life, it would end up costing $50 billion. Well, that's not going to
And the
happen.
other side of the ledger is, by having just and humane benefit systems, you avoid the cost of child abuse, alcoholism, suicide, depression. So it's the two sides of the ledger need to be always shown at the same time.
Yeah.
They never are.
Yeah. Question to both of you. Why should the most vulnerable in New Zealand do with less because of an economic global crisis they had no part in causing?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're going to be punished for something that basically isn't their fault, and they can't get a job if there aren't any jobs. It's just as simple as that, really. And to force people on these merry-go-rounds and the wins, and then they'll contract, and then they'll try and use that to privatise things. I mean, and what we're going to have is a situation where you're loading more stress on people who are already stressed.
Yeah.
And it's entirely negative. But yes, if for a lot of the middle class perhaps, and all of their friends have jobs, very stable jobs, secure employment, then it's maybe difficult to relate to what will be happening now to beneficiaries. They might think back to the old days where you just turn up and that's it.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like that. It's not like that now to start with. I mean, Steve Mahari started cutting back on things and getting tough as well.
That's
but
right.
that was in a time of high employment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now is not, and now is not the time to be doing these sorts of things.
You know, isn't it unfair that the solo mothers, the crippled, the handicapped, the mentally unwell are being asked to do with less? When it was American corporate gangsters and treating Wall Street like a casino that crashed the global economy. Why do these people have
And
to
they're
do
the
with
ones
this?
that are still buffered. You know, the bailout packages are going to those people. The bailout packages are not actually going to the people who are the most vulnerable to these very small but devastating changes in our economy. And I don't know what the answer to that is, well.
Tim, who wins, who loses by bashing the dirty, filthy Benny?
Well, I'm sure people like Paula Bennett, who have gained from the system and have pulled herself up by her bootstraps and all that sort of thing, they become the most evangelical of them all, I think.
Like former smokers.
Well, you could well say that. You could well say that. That
yeah.
sort of evangelical thing. And she says, well, I've done it. Why can't you do it?
Yep.
And I'm going to help you do it.
By forcing you all onto the street.
Yes,
Wonderful.
and the child's 1 year old. Now out you go.
Out you go, quickly. Penny, who wins, who loses by bashing the dirty, filthy Benny?
Talkback wins, community loses.
Thank you, panel. Coming up, Auckland Super City-O-Rama council-controlled organisations pretend to care about democracy. The Aurora Hotel gets dumped faster than Paul Henry, and Len Brown pushes to bypass opposition to building a private prison in Wiri. Why is Len channeling John Banks? Citizen A is back after the break.